Ms. Sullivan, let me ask you, picking up on Senator Rubio's question, Egypt and what we knew when is critical. Can you tell me when the intelligence community first alerted the president and other policymakers that Egyptian street protesters were likely to threaten President Mubarak's hold on power?
The IC has assessed for some time that the political stagnation in these countries has been untenable in the long run. Our experts have been closely following the drivers of change from economic instability and conditions to the youth bulge in these areas and other societal factors that underlie the current crisis. We will continue to monitor developments as we go forward, and we will continue to feed in a continuous process indicators of additional instability across the region.
That's helpful, but that's not the question I asked. The question I asked was, when did the intelligence community first alert the president and policymakers that protesters were likely to threaten President Mubarak's hold on power?
We have warned of instability. We didn't know what the triggering mechanism would be for that, and that happened in the end of the last year.
So did you give him a sense at the end of last year? I mean, you know, if you don't want to give me a specific date, I am interested in when the president was told how serious this was. I mean, if you tell me it was the end of last year or last week or, last month, you don't have to give me a specific date. But this goes again to the function, of intelligence. And, to me, the intelligence community's primary job is to collect information from people who know important things. And you can't just gaze into a crystal ball and try to guess what can't be predicted. But I do want to get a general sense of when you all told the president that we were faced with something that was as serious as what we have seen in recent days.
I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to satisfy your specific question. My duties involved a more general understanding of the debates that were going on and not the face-to-face briefing of the president over this past year.
You were told yesterday I was going to ask this question, weren't you?
Not in this detail, sir.
All right, because I think I'm told by staff that we notified you specifically because I wanted to get into this area. So I think it's unfortunate we're not getting more specifics given the fact you were put on notice. Speaking more broadly, do you think it's realistic to expect U.S. intelligence agencies to have deep coverage of every country in the world, or should policymakers just expect to focus really on high-priority countries and issues?
The intelligence community has to have coverage of every area of the world that we possibly can in preparation for those hotspots that policymakers need to focus on. We don't get to relax our vigilance on global coverage as we chase the current unfolding crisis.
What's the role of the DNI in all this? When the DNI, for example, lays out certain priorities for intelligence collection and analysis, how will you expect the various agencies to react?
The DNI has a very critical role. The DNI adjudicates between competing requirements and then allocates resources aligned to those top priority requirements. And the classic example you've just laid out is one that we frequently wrestle with, which is how do we cover the whole world and maintain the crisis collection and assessments on ongoing and unfolding events.
The Congress created the position of DNI so that there'd be somebody who was responsible for looking across all of the various intelligence agencies to make sure the enterprise was as effective as possible. And one of the questions that those of us on the committee ask every time we confirm a new director or a deputy director of national intelligence is how well is the concept working? So from your vantage point as a senior manager at the CIA, how well is the concept of a director of national intelligence working in practice?
I can tell you unequivocally, as a member of the senior management team at CIA, that we are fully on board with the DNI's leadership and vision for the community. It resonates with us. His vision with all the men and women in the community, it resonates. His vision focused on mission and integration works. It makes sense to everyone. We went through a lot of stand-up pains in the community, but in my assessment and my experience over the last year or so, and especially as Director Clapper has come on and laid out his vision, I believe that most of that is behind us.
Thank you, Madam Chair.